Nia sat on the balcony of their small apartment, watching the busy streets below. The sound of honking cars, street vendors shouting their prices, and children laughing in the distance filled the evening air. She sighed, knowing that soon, she would have to go back inside. Her mother, Mama Abina, worked long hours as a shop attendant in a supermarket. She left early in the morning and returned late at night, exhausted. Nia had once been happy, but that was before her mother married Baba Kwaku. Baba Kwaku was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a deep voice. He worked as a security guard at a bank, and everyone in the neighborhood respected him. But behind closed doors, he was different. His eyes were always on Nia. His touch lasted too long. That night, as soon as Mama Abina left for her night shift, Baba Kwaku called her inside. "Nia, come here," he said, his voice deep and firm. She hesitated, her heart pounding. I have homework," she said, hoping to escape. He chuckled darkly. "It can wait." Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped inside, knowing what was coming. For weeks, Nia endured Baba Kwaku's abuse. Each night when her mother was at work, he forced himself on her. He whispered threats in her ear. "If you tell anyone," he warned, "they won't believe you. They'll blame you." She wanted to scream, to run away, but where would she go? Who would believe her? One afternoon, she sat alone at school, her head resting on the desk. Her best friend, Ajua, nudged her. "Nia, what's wrong? You're not yourself anymore." Nia hesitated, then whispered, "Baba Kwaku, he does bad things to me." Ajua's eyes widened. "You have to tell someone." Nia wiped her tears. "Who will believe me? He is a respected man." Ajua grabbed her hand. "Then tell your mother." Nia nodded. She had to try. That night, when Mama Abina returned from work, Nia gathered all her courage. "Mama, I need to talk to you," she said softly. Mama Abina, exhausted, sat on the sofa. "What is it, my child?" Nia's hands trembled. "It's Baba Kwaku. He touches me when you're not home." Mama Abina's eyes widened. She shook her head in disbelief. "Nia, don't say such things. That man provides for us." "But Mama, I am telling the truth." Nia cried. Her mother slapped her. "Stop lying. Kwaku is a good man. You are just looking for attention." Tears streamed down Nia's face. She had told the truth, but her own mother refused to believe her. She ran into her room and cried herself to sleep. The next day, Mama Abina spoke to a few women in the neighborhood about what Nia had said. "My daughter is lying against my husband," she said angrily. "She is trying to destroy our family." One of the women, Auntia, shook her head. "Children these days are too stubborn. You need to discipline her." Baba Kwaku pretended to be heartbroken. "I love Nia like my own daughter. I don't know why she is saying these lies." Mama Abina sighed. "I knew it wasn't true. She's just being difficult." That night, Nia felt completely alone. One evening, Mama Abina returned home earlier than usual. She had left her phone at home and needed to retrieve it. As she opened the door, she heard muffled crying. She walked closer to Nia's room. The door was slightly open, and what she saw made her freeze. Baba Kwaku was forcing himself on her daughter. For a moment, she couldn't move. Then, with a scream of rage, she grabbed a glass bottle from the kitchen and smashed it against his back. He fell to the floor, groaning in pain. "Nia. My child." Mama Abina rushed to her, pulling her close. "I am so sorry. I should have believed you." Nia sobbed in her mother's arms. "I told you, Mama. I told you." Mama Abina's eyes filled with regret and anger. That night, she called the police. The truth had finally come out. The police arrived quickly. Baba Kwaku tried to protest, but the officers didn't listen. They arrested him on the spot. The neighborhood was in shock. Some people murmured, embarrassed that they had defended him. At the police station, Mama Abina held Nia's hand tightly. "You are safe now," she whispered. Nia nodded, but she knew healing would take time. After Boba Kwaku's arrest, Mama Abina couldn't bear to stay in the same apartment. It held too many painful memories. One morning, she packed their belongings. "We will move to a new neighborhood," she told Nia. "We need a fresh start." Nia felt a sense of relief. "Yes, Mama. I don't want to stay here." They moved to a small, quiet area where no one knew their past. Auntie Efua, Mama Abina's sister, welcomed them warmly. "You are safe here," she said. For the first time in a long while, Nia felt at peace. At her new school, Nia kept to herself. She no longer trusted people easily. But one day, the teacher gave an assignment: write about a time you were brave. Nia hesitated, then took a deep breath and began writing. By the time she finished, she realized something: she was not just a victim. She was a survivor. That day, she read her story aloud to the class. Some students cried. Others sat in stunned silence. Her teacher, a kind woman named Madam Oma, hugged her after class. "You are strong, Nia. Never let anyone silence your voice again." For the first time, Nia believed it. Years passed, and Nia grew into a confident young woman. She no longer lived in fear of Boba Kwaku or the shame of her past. Instead, she used her experience to help others. She became an advocate for young girls who had suffered in silence. She spoke at schools, community centers, and women's gatherings. One day, after giving a speech at a school, a young girl approached her. "Sister Nia," she whispered, "my uncle does bad things to me, just like what happened to you." Nia knelt down and held the girl's hands. "You are not alone. I believe you." That night, Nia helped the girl find safety, just as she had once longed for someone to do for her. Years later, Nia stood before a large audience, speaking about her journey. She was no longer the frightened girl who had been ignored and doubted. She was a warrior, a protector, and a voice for the voiceless. As she finished her speech, the crowd stood and clapped. Among them were young girls, women, and even men who had been afraid to speak out. Nia smiled. Her story had not been easy, but it had.